Welcome back to another episode of the Catholic Talk Show. With Pope Leo's inauguration this weekend, I'm joined by Thaddeus Ruskowski to talk about 10 things Pope Leo should do in his pontificate. All right, Thad, it's always great to have you on, my frequent traveling buddy and sometimes co-host of the Catholic Talk Show. You're filling in for Ryan Delacrosse today, who's taking a nice trip with his kids. Did you watch the papal inauguration this weekend?
Yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night and went, wait, that's starting up soon, and flipped it on. Fell back asleep. I will, and then flipped it on later and watched it with my kids. My wife came through and said, "Is this the new sports for you?" I was like, "It's kind of is, man."
Yeah, you're a diehard. I mean, you've been right on top of it. Now, before we get into it, I just want to make sure everyone, one thing that Pope Leo definitely should do, and you should do as well, is click the like and subscribe button on this video. It helps us to get this show to reach more people. When you subscribe, you get notified of all the new content we make. You can also go to CatholicTalkshow.com and see all the different social media platforms we're on and follow us there for all the fun and interesting stuff that we share out. I think it was a really touching moment, Thad, when Cardinal Tagle gave Pope Leo his fisherman's ring, and you could see the weight and the impact of the moment on his response, on his facial gestures, even how he looked down at the ring and was like, "This is real. I'm the Pope." That was a really touching moment, and to me, that I don't. Maybe I'm putting some conjecture, but to me, it feels like to him that was the moment it all really became real. You know?
Well, I think you're onto something there. I agree 100%. All we're doing is conjecture, right? Until one of us has a conversation with him and asks a question and gets a direct response, it is conjecture. And as sports fans, right, to bring this back, we love conjecture. Who's better, Michael Jordan or LeBron? Cleveland guy will have a statement on it. But I agree. You could tell there was an emotional response to having that ring on his hand. And as a kid who lived outside of Chicago, there's a connection and enthusiasm in seeing him in this place. It's genuinely cool.
So today, let's talk about some things. Now, obviously, Pope Leo, if you're watching, and I know you are, right? Because we can see the metrics. And number one, Your Holiness, congratulations on the inauguration and election to the chair of St. Peter from everyone at the Catholic Talk Show. Here's a couple ideas that we have for Pope Leo. Obviously, these are all things that we'd like to see. These are not us suggesting that we have any influence with the Pope. None of that. Here's some things that we see as issues or opportunities that during what we hope and pray is a long pontificate can be resolved. And some things are beneficial, some things are controversial, and things that can happen that we think Leo will have the opportunity to put a lasting and indelible mark on the faith. So one, and I think this is, let's say this is probably the most political or highly charged of all the ones we'll talk about. That's why I want to get into it first.
You're going to jump right into it.
I'm jumping right into the fire, Thaddeus. You know me.
All right. Let's go.
I mean, Thad, all you have to do is give me a suggestion. You know this. And I'm like, let's do it, right?
Yeah, right.
One of the biggest things that I think caused rancor during the pontificate of Francis was the suppression and what would feel like the attack on traditionalism and the Latin Mass. I think it really caused a problem to where, look, all the good that Francis did in the eyes of people who would view themselves as traditional was overshadowed by what felt like an attack on the liturgy. I think if that issue can get resolved, the church can move forward as one, because I'll tell you, the people who have a affinity for the Latin Mass, a lot of times people who try to denigrate them will say, well, they're just stubborn, they're traditionalists, they're LARPers.
Sure.
And that's not the case. These people have a deep love for the church. I mean, you were using a sports analogy earlier, Thad.
Sure.
Right? We could tell you, who played third base for the Cleveland Indians in 1999, or we could tell you who was the starting left tackle for the Washington Redskins in the 1987 Super Bowl, right? That's the kind of level of dedication and real focus to where it's so integral to their life that I think is mirrored in the people who have that liturgical affinity for the Latin Mass. They want everything that the church has to offer, all the tradition. So their attachment to the Latin Mass is out of a deep love for the faith and a desire for sanctity and a desire for what they would view, and I would also agree with, is a elevated form of offering worship to God. And if we can get that issue resolved, I think everyone in the church can move forward and solve all the other issues that maybe have a little bit more global effect. So what are your thoughts there, Thad?
I think you're on to something. There are definitely people that fall right into the category that you got. There are also folks who just view it as this is the only way. And if we go back to look at Vatican II and saying we want to enculturate, we want people in places to have the Mass in their language so that they can hear the gospel and they can hear the readings and understand those in a way that is very real to them, there's great value in that. And so, I think what Pope Francis was trying to do was say, okay, there is an extreme here that's causing division. Now, I'm going to take a stance on it, is what he says, and puts it out there. Okay, so be it. I think the issue often was in communication, right?
Sure.
Was that, hey, this may not have been the best thing, but he thought it was for the division that it was creating. And I think you'll be encouraged when Pope Leo met with media and news this past week, was saying, look, we need to deal with this division first and foremost. And in doing that, I believe he's laying the groundwork to be able to bring back in some of these things that the church may have, that Pope Francis turned and said, okay, we're going to put a declaration on this that keeps it from being so readily out there, right? That you won't let it be this cause of division. I don't think it was executed great, but I could see that side of things, right?
Here's the thing. I will always say this about Francis. I can, if I put myself, in his place, understand why he did what he did. I can understand it. I don't agree with it.
Sure.
But thank God, that's why I'm never going to be the Pope.
You and me both, buddy.
Right. Well, not yet, at least. But Leo, over the weekend, he said he promised not to rule like an autocrat. And to me,
Sure.
that maybe was a little bit of a olive branch, saying maybe the former approach to this was a little autocratic. Because here, I'll give you an example. You never saw people in the hierarchy saying we need to suppress the Maronite rite of the church. The Maronite rite is incredibly traditional, and they speak Aramaic in their liturgy. You never saw a move to suppress or outlaw the ability for the Syriac churches or for the Ukrainian rite or the Byzantine rite. All of those things were viewed as positive things that should be preserved.
Sure.
So how could some possible solutions like this happen going forward? So I'll give two potential solutions here. And Pope Leo, if you ever want to hire me, put me in a nice tower, give me some food and some coffee, a couple packs of smokes, let me just sit up in the tower and come up with ideas and be a consultant. Happy to do it.
You don't even have to put me in a tower, Pope Leo. Just somewhere within the walls. I'd be excited about that one.
Now, I could definitely see myself as the shady advisor living in a tower, right?
Yes.
But anyway.
No, 100%. Go ahead.
100%. So there's two possible solutions that I could see to this. One is, I think you take a look at the example of the Anglican ordinariate that Benedict the 16th created. The personal chair of St. Peter, or the Our Lady of Walsingham.
Okay.
Created a personal ordinariate to where these this whole group of former Anglicans who want to come into communion with Rome were able to enter the church, and they were able to preserve things like their very distinct liturgy, married priests, kind of I wouldn't say a self-governance, but an independence that allowed them to preserve those traditions and come into communion with the church.
Sure.
I absolutely think, and I'm sure there'll be people who will disagree with this for some reason that I don't see, but if you were to create a Tridentine ordinariate to where anybody who has that attachment to the Latin Mass, whether it's the Institute of Christ the King or the FSSP or the SSPX, and say, look, we are going to allow you to exist canonically in full communion with no canonical irregularity within this Latin ordinariate. I think that's a solution that could potentially make everyone very, very happy. So that what do you think about that?
I think it's a really cool option. I think it's a cool opportunity. The key, I think, runs into an underlying tension of division in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll probably hear me say this a number of times, because if there's one thing that's going to drive anything that I want Pope Leo to do with the church is to bring everybody together, right?
Agreed.
So in direct response to yours, if we can pacify some of the us and them within the church, then I think it's great for what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think there are a lot of solutions that can take place. The nuts and bolts of it, I can honestly say I haven't studied the nuts and bolts of the Catholic Church as much as you in a long time, but the implementation, the execution, it really speaks to what is it that we can do to, as he said numerous times, unify the church and give everyone a place. Because ultimately, what we need to be able to see is value in every person within the church that is truthfully and honestly striving to have communion with God through Jesus Christ. And that gives an opportunity for people to express themselves in the church in a way that is true to what the church teaches, practices, but the actual, I personally hate tambourines in church. Not a big fan. It's a joke with my wife and all my family. But you know what? If done well, maybe there's a place.
Yeah, I mean, there's also Bosco Coltrane, who's like the world-renowned leading tambourine player, so you can always get him in. That's made up.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you. That was a great name. Bosco Coltrane. All right, hit me. What you said, there were two options for implementation.
Yeah, so
the first one is very cool, and I think a great option.
And I think that one solves it with one fell swoop, and it treats the Latin Mass with at least the same respect as respecting its tradition, its heritage, its contributions to the church, as it would with any of the other individual rites. Now, the thing that a lot of people will point to the problem with that is that it splits the Latin rite, right? But how can you call it the Latin rite when you don't have Latin, right? So there's some mechanics to work out about that. But if you look at the Latin rite, or the Eastern rites, they've been split without causing division. I would call it more of like a cellular division, where they're still the same organism, but they're connected in a different way, right? So that's one solution.
Right, but we have to model within our local communities the opportunity for, let's stick with this sports analogy, right? In Chicago, you've got Cubs fans and White Sox fans, and never the two shall meet. We don't want that in the church between these two, right? More of okay, how do we identify the way to have separate and see the value in each? Because I would argue, well, no, I'm not even going to go there. In the sports side of things, having the opportunity to see the value for those that don't prefer a Latin rite or a Latin mass, for those to see the value in that and not see it as detrimental. And I think it speaks a bit to the cultural vibe, specifically within the United States. Right? I can't speak to outside the United States.
I'd argue, though, Byzantine rite has roots as old as the Latin rite. And I don't think you see a lot of standard issue Novus Ordo Latin Catholics upset that the Byzantines have their own divine liturgy, right? I don't think it creates a division. I think it says, look, this is a unique and valuable expression of the liturgy that deserves its own place. So creating an ordinariate and a structure for the Latin Mass to really kind of evolve, which is taking an ancient practice and preserving it in that order. The second would be allowing, and I think maybe this was more the intention that Benedict had wanted when he issued Summorum Pontificum, where you put it back on the bishops, and each bishop, because bishops are not branch managers of the CEO Pope. That's not how bishops are. Bishops are uniquely successors of the apostles. So I think you can kind of go back kind of towards more of a federal system, to use an Americanism, and allow the bishops to decide how they're going to handle the Latin Mass within their own diocese or archdiocese. That might be a good solution as well.
I like it as long as he leads with a strong hand.
Yeah.
Right.
But then again, I mean, go ahead.
Because you could have bishops run off the rails the opposite direction. Right. So there needs to be the guardrails held in place to keep that, right? Because yes, it's not a franchise. They know what's going on where it is, right? Mm-hmm. And so to have the opportunity for these bishops to be able to tend to their flock is key, right? That's why it's successful. Yeah.
Okay, I'll throw out a third option here. Call another Vatican. Call Vatican III, right? Maybe it's time.
Ooh,
some of these issues might need to happen, right? So that's something that Leo can do, is call for Vatican III, because there's a lot of issues going on in the church right now that I think the church needs to speak definitively on. And a lot of the suggestions that we're going to talk about through this video probably could be solved within a Vatican III. But if you had a Vatican III, I think we can maybe more properly synthesize tradition and the order of the Mass as we have it now. And I think you might even offer options of a modified Mass that makes everyone happy. One of the things that I see, I can presume that a lot of people in the doctrine departments and the liturgy departments and Pope Francis was saying, look, the people who only want Latin Mass and say, I will never celebrate a Novus Ordo. I could see the problem in that, because you are saying your Mass is invalid, and that's a problem. And that's a pretty rare instance, but it's something that needs to be addressed. But if you could find look, even if you do what the ordinary did, just take the Latin Mass and say it in the vernacular. Make that an option. Because if they say it's about reverence, the language could be secondary. I know Latin's important, but I think the reverence, if you could just allow the traditional Mass to be celebrated in the vernacular, which is kind of happened, I think, around 1965, for a very brief period in between the council and Paul VI's new Mass. That might be an option too. So there's some options, but the larger point is that I'd love to see that get solved. I'd love to see the situation of the SSPX get resolved and cleared up. I'd love to see people who have the strongest, probably in my opinion, devotion to the church and its traditions be allowed to celebrate the liturgy in a way that best edifies them. I don't see the wisdom in allowing your most vociferous and ardent and strident believers being the bullseye of your biggest attacks. Doesn't make sense to me. You didn't see doctrine departments going after people who say, let's have, I don't know, married lesbian bishops. They weren't clamping down on them. You didn't see them clamping down on Catholics for choice, pro-choice politicians. You didn't see any of that. You saw them going after the people who like the church the most. It didn't make sense to me. So I'd like to see kind of a detente in that, and then some real conversations and finding a solution.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there.
All right, let's move on to the next one. Now, again, remember, these could all be happening in the pretext of a supposed or, I don't know, hypothetical Vatican III. So, Thad, this is one that I think is a very small issue, but you and I have been to the Vatican together, but now 7-8 times, right? Under the Pontificate of Francis, they suspended the ability, and I think it was during COVID, to have private masses in the side altars of St. Peter. You used to be able to have a mass at the tomb of John Paul II
Sure.
or any of the side altars, on the different transepts. They don't allow that to happen anymore.
Right.
And I think that is one of the easiest things that you could fix to really make St. Peter's, again, feel like the home of every Catholic worldwide, to where you can have those masses there in St. Peter's. And that's an easy fix. Just say, yeah, the side altars are open again.
Yeah, I love the idea, Ryan. It's and I'll give you a very concrete reason why. So we were there with the Catholic Talk Show pilgrimage, right? And we did our procession from the river right on up to the church. And here we are. We walked through the door with the cross, and John was carrying the cross in for us. And half the group, if not 2/3 of the group, got caught up in all the tourists that were just standing around, walking around, just taking pictures, holding their phones everywhere in St. Peter's, one of my favorite places in the entire world. I had that revelation this weekend as I was watching the inaugural mass. It is so special there. I'm not saying that it needs to be mouse quiet, but if you had those masses going on in the side chapels, I think your tourists, and we saw it in other churches that we were in,
right,
they would pay more respect to the place, and it would be less of Catholic Disney World and more of, this is a place of prayer, a place of experience where I'm going to go in, I'm going to show due respect, and from an evangelization standpoint, give an opportunity for people to join in, right? When we had mass at St. John Lateran, or was it Paul? It was Paul outside the walls. We had mass with the pilgrims in the main altar, not the high altar, but the main altar at the end of the church. And I was shocked at the number of people that joined our pilgrimage group.
That's right,
to participate in the mass, to receive communion. And it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have the opportunity to travel all over Christendom, I'll call it. And we've celebrated mass at, thank you. Yeah. We've celebrated mass at all of these important churches in the side chapels, in the side altars, whether it's Compostela, whether it's John Lateran or Mary Major, Paul's outside the wall, Lourdes, Fatima. We've had that opportunity, and they took that opportunity away in St. Peter's. And I think that is something that's an easy fix, that it will be, number one, very well received by all the priests who go to Rome, whether it's, after they're made a priest, whether it's all the priests who are there studying at all the different colleges, all the pilgrims that go there. It just seems to make too much sense, too easy. I think that's definitely Pope Leo. If you're still watching, which I know you are, because you're taking your exercise and doing your walk, and you listen to the whole episode of the Catholic Talk Show every week, like everyone
on
else
a big screen by the tennis court.
Screen, right? By the tennis court, right? That's an easy fix. Let's see if we can make that one happen.
There's a logistics piece of it, obviously, practical implications, and there is some way that you can still have those, because as we had the mass,
they've done it for years. They've done it for years. It's only not happened for like 4 years. Just go back to what you used to do.
But then back in November, you and I were part of that forum, and we had mass right there at the Tomb of St. Peter. I have to say, watching the inauguration and seeing Pope Leo walk down and stand there and see the glass behind him and know that we were right on the other side was pretty doggone cool.
Well, what was even cooler, the day after he was elected, him and his brother went down there and celebrated mass. And I'm like, dude, I was sitting in that same seat. That was pretty cool. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one that Pope Leo can consider doing during his pontificate. This is another one that talks about church unity, but this is maybe going outside of just our Latin Western camp and getting concrete and closing the deal with the Orthodox Church. Now, that's a loaded statement. There's a lot to it, but you could see at the inauguration, the representatives of the Orthodox churches were there in unity and fraternity, joyfully. And it's something that's time has come. It's been 1,000 years, guys. Let's just figure it out. And let's not try to solve every problem. let's, sometimes you just have to say, okay, we're cool again, and the little problems will fix down the way. But it might not be possible to come into communion with every Orthodox church, because Orthodox ecclesiology and ecclesiastical structure is very different than
Sure.
the Catholic Church. They have national churches. There's no one person who can call the shot and says, I'm signing a paper, you're all Catholic now, you're all in communion. I mean, you have the Serbian Orthodox, you have the Polish Orthodox, you have the Romanian. They all have their national churches. You have the Patriarch of Moscow. So as a first step and as a sign of unity, I think the most important one, and probably the one who is the most, in my view, and what I've read, what I've seen, receptive to it, is getting back into communion with the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew.
Okay.
Peter and Andrew, Bartholomew and Leo, brothers, the two, I would say, historically most important of the five patriarchs, really viewed largely as the leaders of the East and West. Guys, just let's just make this happen. Paul VI lifted the excommunication. I believe it was with, I hope I don't get this wrong and the Orthodox are mad at me, but I think it was Athenagoras on the Mount of Olives where they lifted the mutual excommunication. Let's just make it to where we can be in full communion, receive sacraments at both churches, and that we can work together for two reasons. Number one, the church needs to breathe with both lungs, but also for the preservation of the Eastern historic Christians throughout the Near and Middle East who have been under incredible persecution and dwindling numbers and forced out of their historic homelands for thousands of years, but intensely for the last 25.
Sure. This is outside of my area of expertise, and I've known if I don't have anything I can contribute, just go, yeah, sounds good. But I will say your pronunciations are stellar. I can add that. I will add this, Ryan. I love the idea because, again, to this unifying vision, right? That Christ came and said, I'm here to bring everyone to heaven, and it's up to that decision, right? It wasn't just this person or that person, and oftentimes he spent time with those individuals that a lot of people looked at and said, no, I'm not going near that person. So in that spirit, I'm behind it. Game on.
Yep. Again, this could happen within the context of a Vatican III. I know one of the big sticking issues is the Filioque clause, and from the Son.
Oh,
why don't, Leo, look, the creed, I've been to plenty of Ukrainian and Ruthenian Rite divine liturgies, and they don't say "and from the Son" there. Let's trade that clause. We could just all say it under a breath, right? Let's trade that clause in the creed, because you have to have all the bishops, and I think this would have to definitely include the bishops of the Orthodox East to make a change to the creed. Let's trade the Filioque and add the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist to the creed, and then let's call it a day, and then it's a big hug, and then we just all go and have a giant, awesome mass divine liturgy together. I mean, I know I'm oversimplifying it, but it should happen.
Right. And then afterwards, coffee and donuts.
Coffee and donuts. Yeah.
We did that. Yeah.
So there's a couple other things that will play into this later. And Thad, you're going to like this because, again, being the shady advisor in the Tower of Winds up there, just crushing black coffee and smokes, coming up with great ideas. Well, I got some ideas that will play into this.
Yeah. Ideas.
Ideas, right? That's it.
Ideas. Yeah.
Ideas.
I mean, look, then it's up to Leo to discern, right?
Okay.
We're just chucking him out there, giving him the opportunity to say, you know what? That guy had some wisdom there.
I'm the weird kind of guy, Thad, who likes to read papal legate dispatches from 1,000 years ago between the East and West. Those kinds of things really interest me. And in the realpolitik of the negotiations between East and West, whether it was the emperor calling for aid from Urban or, all the different letters that would go back and forth, all these things. I understand that there's a lot of politics that was involved in the church being split East and West. I mean, it goes back to the split of the Roman Empire between the Greek East and the Latin West. A lot of reasons for it. But I've got some really great negotiating tools that'll make it so good that Constantinople will absolutely agree. And then once you have Constantinople as the model, I think then you get the Bulgarians or the Serbians, they come in tow too. So here it is.
Cool.
I've got two things that would generate enough revenue for the Vatican to be able to buy the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople from Turkey and then be able to give it to the Patriarch of Constantinople as a welcome home gift, right?
Okay.
Again,
all right.
big plans. So here's two things that I really do think that Pope Leo could do and the church could do to really grow membership in the church worldwide, but then also establish a solid economic base. Because I heard a cardinal once said that, and this is true, you can't run the church on Hail Marys. There is a financial reality to running an international organization that ministers to over 1.5 billion people with education, healthcare, with social services, care for the sick,
all the
care
lights
for the elderly, all the lights. Look, lights aren't free. I mean, you can say all the Hail Marys you want, and maybe 1 out of 1 million Mary will say, turn on a light, right? You can't expect a miracle to keep the air conditioning on. So here's two things that the Vatican can do. So number one, they need to clean up their books. But here is a good way to clean up their books. I propose, Pope Leo, you should create Vaticoin.
Oh my gosh. You went there.
So I went there. The Vaticoin is a hypothetical Vatican cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And this cryptocurrency, which effectively would become the inherent outside of the euro currency of the church for matters of internal transfers, internal donations, this could generate enough revenue worldwide to create a new financial backing that could allow for some of these really great ecumenical and evangelical outreaches that we'll propose. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy.
Okay.
Until we figure out. All right, so let's go a couple.
Like Vaticoin?
Vaticoin would have to be a stable coin if it's going to be something. It has to be backed by something else. So the concept of a blockchain backed currency, I'm good with. But you know what?
That's what I would propose.
Far too many scams associated with cryptos right now for the church to be stepping into with this, that because look, I love my parents. I help them with their emails and their computers. If all of a sudden the church was asking them to give them Vaticoin, they could end up over at whatever, Rita coin, and think it was St. Rita's currency, right? I don't think we want to introduce that kind of dude. I am regularly going back to that experience.
Me too.
Up in Kasha. It was powerful.
Tim. Yeah.
But I just right now, I think this is where the glacial pace of the church is going to protect it from something like Vaticoin.
Okay. I hear your concerns. And number one, I would not propose to do a meme coin, right? I don't want Pope Leo to, I believe the term is rug the population. Exactly. Okay.
I mean, come on, man.
I don't want the Vatican to rug all these little old ladies out of their money. Here's some benefits that I think that a Vatican-based blockchain-backed currency could provide to the world. Because number one, it's a decentralization of asset value so that, again, it creates more independence of the Vatican from the currency of other countries, whether it's China, whether it's the United States, whether it's the euro, because they are, and most transactions throughout the world are based on that currency, you are largely at the mercy of that. So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's and keep to God what is God's. So we all know that the Vatican financial systems have had a lot of controversy and a lot of financial lack of transparency. And that was one of the big things that led to the resignation of Benedict XVI, was around the financial running of the Vatican, to where he's like, I'm too old and don't have the energy to fix this up, but somebody needs to. And then you had that Council of Cardinals with Cardinal Pell of blessed memory, who was on it, finding all this discrepancy, all these scandals, right? So a blockchain-based transactions are inherently audible and trackable. You can get rid of so much fudging and cooking of the books and really
Yeah, there
clean
would
up
be
transactions.
look, I agree with you that the church is a perfect spot to
Right?
be to use blockchain based accounting practices,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's some details there would have to be get resolved, but the currency associated with it, that's where I just don't know, right? Because
Okay,
you
hold
can
on.
still
Let me
do.
let me convince you. I've got a lot more points.
Let me finish. The blockchain, the blockchain accounting purpose of it can be done without it being a currency. And I think that transparency of the church in the transactions would be an amazing example to the globe of how to model our fairness, justice, and equity in
That's it.
others. But the currency being it has to be based on something, right?
Oh,
It can't just be a made up value to say, hey, we're good with
oh,
this and we're going to
like the
keep
United
running it
States
through.
Federal Reserve.
I would love us to go back to that, but that's a whole different podcast.
The United States Federal Reserve is based on nothing, dude. There's no gold.
I know.
There's no silver. It's basically based on our war machine.
This is not Thad's conspiracy theory podcast.
Right. I know. Okay,
go.
here's another reason is that it can absolutely streamline international donations. You have people from 187 countries around the world donating money to the Vatican. That causes fees. That causes conversion discrepancies. It causes all sorts of different complications, issues, and ultimately less money getting to where it needs to go. If you had one standard currency that's good anywhere in the world that can go to the Vatican for its charitable contributions, that clears that up too.
Yeah, but I'm not going into 7-Eleven and buying a Slurpee with Vaticoin. They're never going to take that. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, so, no one ever said they would take Dogecoin. No one ever said they would take Bitcoin.
And they still
But when
don't.
you have the, okay, yes, I do. I bought stuff with Doge. I bought stuff with Bitcoin. It happens. You're just a dinosaur.
I am a dinosaur. Go ahead, bud. Next one. Come on.
You did bring that up, that it would definitely help, number one, increase the Vatican's transparency and position the church as a leader in ethical currency guidelines, right? So that's a really important thing. And talk about the future of currency, because this stuff is coming. And if the Vatican can be out front, and create these guidelines by the implementation of its own, it helps to cast the standard for what can happen.
It's going to take a little time to get there, but I think it gets a perfect transition to the other item on the list here of AI encyclical and dealing with artificial intelligence.
I'm not done with that though, but we'll get to that. I'm going to go through my benefits here real quick. Okay. It could absolutely help people in third world countries have better secure access to banking, right? You have these people where their currency is so volatile, their value can get wiped out with one coup, right? This would help have a decentralized, safe and trusted place to keep their value from being wiped out, whether it's, the Zimbabwe dollar or, was the Iraqi dinar, all these things where people had generations of wealth wiped out, or Venezuela, right? If people were keeping their currency and their value inside a store of a trusted, safe, independent, impartial place, that helps the poor and people who don't have access to solid and ethical banking systems within their country. It would also really help for the internal transmission of, paying people internally at the Vatican. They got hundreds and thousands of employees and priests and benefits. Look, have it all in one system. Also, how cool would it be, Thad, that when you want to go and make a donation at church every week, it's in a single standard currency. Whether you're at World Youth Day or you're a pilgrim, drop a couple Vaticoins. The fractionalized could be widows' mites, whatever you want to call it. There's so many benefits to this. I think that smarter guys than me can figure it out, but I know that this is something that would definitely.
You're still going to deal with exchange rates, right? Because we all get paid in dollars here in the U.S., so we're going to have to exchange it to Vaticoins.
That's one time.
Okay. No, it's
instead
not
of always going back and forth. You put your money in there.
This is why the stable coin is the way to go. If you're going to do it, it can't have fluctuations. You're right. We don't want it. We don't want the church rugging people. There's way too much to be figured out about cryptocurrencies before I'm going to get behind this idea.
All right. Well, These suggestions are for Pope Leo, not for Thaddeus Ruskowski. So
I understand, but as his advisor, that's not
okay.
up in the tower smoking cigarettes and drinking black coffee, that's down sitting in the garden drinking
Okay.
a cappuccino and saying, let's have a conversation about this. I can't get behind this one.
Well, when you can't afford your guanciale next time we're in Italy and I've got Vaticoin, don't come crying to me, but okay.
Okay, I won't.
All right. You brought up AI encyclicals, and I think this is another part of that. I definitely would like to see, and this could definitely be something that could be Leo could tackle.
I think it's in the works.
I'm sure it is in the works. And we know this firsthand that people have been working inside and behind the walls of the Vatican trying to get a real grasp and a real ethical guideline standard and exploring the ramifications of AI. This is something I definitely see happening, and I'm really looking forward to Leo's leadership in this matter.
I agree with you 100%. Yes, you're spot on. Guys like Matthew Sanders, the guys at Hallow, there are a bunch of folks.
Father Jean Grove.
Father Jean Grove. I mean, game on, man. Talk about a smart individual that's recognizing it from the right place. I think it says something that Pope Leo came out and said, AI compared to the Industrial Revolution is part of why I chose the name, right? Mm-hmm. He recognizes that that's there. It also acknowledges that the church recognizes that that's going on. I also found it very interesting that the knee-jerk reaction of everybody that was covering that statement was to say the church is teaching the fears of AI, right? No, that we need to get away from that language and show, if you go back and read Rerum Novarum, it's so easy to point at, look, we have to look for those most underprivileged, for the poor, for those in the world. And yes, we do. But the start of that document says we as individuals have a right to personal property as part of our family. Now, it shouldn't be in excess, and that if there's someone in need and we have more, we should share, right? But it wasn't saying we shouldn't have everything. It was a commentary on socialism, right? Well, as we look at AI and we look at the cost, if you look at the conversation around AI right now, it's the cost of processing. It's the cost of doing the work associated with it that directly leans into, okay, we could have those that have and those that have not, and that gap could widen if we don't come in and discuss and give guidance on the human being and the value of an individual in a time when everyone's looking to have a conversation about how can I use AI to do something so I don't have to think about it. I don't have to lift with it, right?
For people who say that the Vatican is going to only come out and condemn AI, it sounds like they've never read any encyclical that comes from any pope.
Right.
No encyclical just comes out and says, nope, can't do it. Everything about it is evil. It's directly from the devil. It's for the Mohammedans. That's just not how it works. They go out and say, look, here's the good that can come from it. And here are the risks. And here are the things that would show that it is damaging human dignity. But whether it be capitalism, democracy, technology, printing press, mass media, scientific advancements, the Vatican always takes a very moderate, centered approach where it says there is good that comes from this. This is how you maximize and harness the good. And here are the risks that you have to be aware of to where people can exploit this to damage human dignity. And I think, and I'm positive and I'm hopeful that that's exactly how Leo will lead the church in this on AI. Especially coming after the cast of Leo XIII, who did the same thing with the Industrial Revolution.
Sure. Right. Well, you could think of it as the Industrial Revolution was an attack on the muscle and just the physical capabilities of an individual.
Good
right?
point.
Someone who wasn't there. That AI is now in the mind. And so it's now doing there. And the knowledge work, the capabilities. I don't know if you want to touch on this, but over the course of the weekend, we made quite the stir with AI. I generated some videos. There's a recent fad of baby videos, and it's putting babies into videos that show up. Well, we did that with Pope Leo. Pope Leo, I hope you liked it. It was in no way meant to be anything other than fun, but I will tell you what I found in using AI to create these videos, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people came around them and saw it as fun and relevant for the church, right? That
Yep.
we saw the Pope and the Cardinals part of something that was going on that was meant in fun and jest and, quite honestly, just super cool use of the technology, that here we are in a way evangelizing in a very approachable way. What is this that he's wearing? Why is this baby standing here waving, speaking in Latin, right? Awesome. Absolutely awesome.
You know, when people look at AI only as a threat, not a tool, that's when you can get a little bit alarmist, right? Did you have people storming the streets saying, "Oh no, the animators are going to take over the world"? They have people flying and they have dwarves working in mines. That's not natural. That's an attack on the dignity of God. No, like people didn't think that about animators. I don't think they said that about when CG graphics came out. Like, oh no, this is wrong. No, this is definitely an ethical attack on the dignity of human beings that, I don't know, Legolas can ski over orcs like he's on a surfboard, right?
Right. Or go back even further when you're talking about Vermeer, the Dutch painters and the realists, and Caravaggio and his use of light to make it to where, it looks real. It's a painting, right? I think the part of the consideration now is with the internet, we can have immediate information out everywhere. And yes, there is potential for this to be wronged in the same way that a hammer can be used to build and to destroy. We have to look at it, and as a church, as part of the church, the laity in the church, recognize that we use these tools to bring people in, right?
Mm-hmm.
To give the opportunity for them to have an experience that look at something, right? I had comments come up in the video that we shared. What is he saying? Or somebody saying, so amazing what he had there. And the opportunity to engage and to bring somebody into something, the beauty of our faith through something as fun and goofy as baby videos is awesome.
Yeah. The church has done stuff like that. I mean, go look at like the Baroque paintings where they have the little angel babies. You know what they would do? You would have rich benefactors say, "Look, you put my baby as one of those little cherubs, I'll help pay for this church.
I'll pay for the painting." Right.
Right. Yeah. Little Bosco Giuseppe, who was also great at tambourine.
Just to be clear, yeah, absolutely great at tambourine. No babies were used in the actual filming of the videos we put out.
That's right.
No babies were injured. Everything was good. We didn't pin costumes on the kids at all. So, hey, I know this isn't on the list, but I want to chuck one into the list here. We talked about AI. I'd just like to redo the Vatican website.
Thank God, yes.
There is a ton of information on that website and fantastic stuff, but I can't look at it on my phone, right? And you and I both being in this business, we know if you can't use it on the phone, that's going to be one of our, right?
Call Fusati, we'll take care of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Fusati'd love to redo the website for you, Vatican. Pope Leo, give us a shout. We'll do a free consultation on it. Right? We'll pay to go out. We'll do that. We'll give you a consultation.
You can even pay us in Vaticoin.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I'll take it if Leo's going to give it to me. That'd be great.
But I will do it for free.
Hey,
Yeah. That is a minor annoyance. And the people at the Vatican, I really do think have elevated their game in their communications. Yes. Vatican News was awesome during this last cycle. They do such a great job in videography and communications. The Sala Stampa, they do an amazing job. The website I know is big and unwieldy, but we've dealt with projects that big for the hundreds of websites that our Thad and I and Ryan Dela Crosse, our company Fusati, have built for Catholic organizations that take the best practices of modern digital communications and evangelization and use them on behalf of the church. So the Vatican website, let's update that a little bit.
I mean, that's just a practical thing, right?
You can even keep the parchment.
Yeah. We'll have a
Look,
conversation about the parchment.
The parchment's iconic. You have to find a way to use it in, but let's be a little bit less heavy-handed with it.
Our designers are so good. I'm confident they could find a way to work the parchment into it.
That's
all
right.
Enough.
All right. Here's
Enough
another
shilling our business here.
That's right. You can go to Fusati.com to learn more about how Fusati is the premier Catholic marketing agency. We can help you everything with app development, website development, marketing campaigns, lead generations, and more. And that's where you'll see that Thaddeus, myself, Ryan Scheel, and Ryan Delacrosse all work in our day jobs, because let me tell you, the Catholic Talk Show is not good enough for us to quit our day job over, because we're not that good at it. But our day job, I think we're the best at it. Okay.
Absolutely. And I'll just say what sets it apart, and I know I'm here, everybody that's working on any of these is looking to understand the why, the how, and how do we make this the best to put out there.
That's right.
Not to say we're always perfect, but we're always there.
You know, I learned an interesting fact that and I don't know if this, I don't think this is canon law, but I think this is kind of custom, that no Catholic Church in its construction can ever be perfectly symmetrical. They always have to have at least one architectural, whether it's an angle, whether it's a proportion off, because otherwise you'd be trying to appropriate the perfection of the new earth, the new Jerusalem, the new heaven. So you might have one wall that's a 91-degree angle. You might have, instead of using the golden ratio, you might have it, just off by a few digits. Just something that an architect puts in the architecture of a church to make sure that it is not perfectly symmetrical in deference to the new Jerusalem and the new heaven. I think that's great.
Here's an idea for anybody out there looking for a college project. Create a website that lists all the churches and identify that one thing so that people can go in and look at that in the church. I think that would be amazing.
The imperfection is me and you as babies on the wall.
Be amazing.
That'd be amazing, dude.
One day, I'm gonna
if I could put together
a church to make a little chubby angel baby out of me and put it up on the ceiling.
If I can scrape together enough Vaticoin, I'm definitely going to pay to have that happen.
Nailing it. All right. Well, if Vaticoin becomes
those are called callbacks,
I will do that as well.
I talked about two ways for the Vatican to generate revenue. One was Vaticoin. Two, I've been a proponent of this now for 5 years. Pope Leo, offer every Catholic worldwide dual citizenship to the Holy See. You, as a dual citizen of both Peru, the United States, and now of the Holy See, you've got tri-citizenship, can understand the benefits of this. And if every Catholic in the world was also a citizen of the Holy See, there's a couple things that can happen. There is tax revenue. And let's not pretend that popes throughout history with the papal states don't know the power of what tax revenue can do on behalf of evangelization and the advancement of beauty in the church. Look at Pope Julius II, an amazing historical figure, an amazing pope, a holy man. Dude understood what tax revenue meant to the church. It's not a bad word. And it could definitely not be something that is, burdensome. But if you have 1.4 billion Catholics as citizens of your country, well, you just became the most populous country in the world. Number one, that's a flex. Two, if everyone was just giving a little bit, even if it's $1, that's a $1.4 billion a year. That comes out pretty darn well. And then the Vatican then can protect the rights of people, especially as we get into the modern world where I can only imagine totalitarianism and thought crimes are going to become more and more prosecuted, to where the Vatican can protect the moral and personal rights of people, and most especially their religious freedoms throughout the world as citizens of their country. I am the biggest proponent of that. That's an idea that came to me, I think, in sleep or prayer or over, I don't know what, but I just
a lot of black coffee and cigarettes.
A lot of black coffee. I just think that would do so much for unity in the church. I am a card-carrying member. I've got my Vatican passport. I am a member of the Vatican. And what it also does is it allows for us, for the church to have its proper place in negotiations for peace around the world.
I love the idea of a Vatican passport. I'm skeptical of some of your the tax piece of it, right? We as Catholics are called to give, and we're having a tough enough time getting to give as it is right now. As we
I know
see
there's
in all
Peter's
these places.
pence and people could do that now, but
But hold on, hear me out. So I think a point that we made earlier, cleaning up the books and having the transparency, will help with that giving. Period. Right? That gets cleared up, straightened up, and we're able to give it in. Right?
Yep.
And so whether it's a tax or whether it's just increased on it, I asked the logistical question. What else does a papal passport give you in the perks? Right? Where does that really go with it? I want to see it almost like a fast pass line into St. Peter's. When you go to visit, you have your papal passport. You're not just going in to take pictures. You're going in to pray. You're going in to participate in mass. That
they do
would
kind of have that now.
thing. Don't give it away.
Okay, I won't give it away.
Look
but
for it at St. Peter's, y'all, when you go.
Yeah. Okay. So here's something that also plays off of that. And I think we've seen this a lot in the news recently. And during the Pontificate of Leo XIV, I pray, hope, and I really do kind of suspect that this is going to happen more and more, that the Vatican becomes the de facto site for negotiations between warring countries. We've seen Zelensky, we've seen communications between Pakistan and India. We've seen communications with the United States. We've seen them lead the charge in trying to resolve the Israel and Gaza conflict. That is the most appropriate place for the Holy See to exert temporal influence in today's world. A lot of people will say the Pope needs to start wearing the tiara again. And I heard it said, and this kind of actually
I've never heard anybody say that other than you.
Yeah, it happens all the time. That was a big thing. Oh, is the Pope going to wear the tiara at his inauguration? And they look at that as kind of like a flex or a sign of importance. But I heard it argued saying, well, the tiara was a symbol of when the Pope owned half of Italy as a temporal ruler, in addition to his job as a spiritual leader. Well, he no longer has. I mean, he has a microstate. It took us 10 minutes to go around it on scooters. It's not that big. I mean, it's a protectorate of Italy. So he doesn't really exert temporal power in that respect anymore. So the tiara is kind of incongruous with the reality of what the modern papal office is. But to exert that diplomatic, independent, and neutral negotiating grounds to resolve peace, I can't think of any better way for the successor of Peter and the vicar of Christ than to be the seat of peacemaking throughout the world. That is something that I would love to see more of, and I would love to see a concerted effort that be advertised and understood worldwide, that if you want peace negotiations, instead of going to Geneva, instead of going to Brussels, instead of going to New York, you go to the Vatican. That's what I would love to see.
I think it's a cool idea. I think that we have to acknowledge the fact that the Vatican has weighed in on all of these things, constantly calling for peace. I think your practical, logistical say, hey, we're going to have mediation area, right? We saw during the funeral of Pope Francis, Zelensky and Trump sitting down in St. Peter's, where you and I have had numerous conversations,
right?
Probably more impactful than the conversation they had, if I'm honest. But then Zelensky comes in and visits with Pope Leo. Did you see the painting he presented him with?
I did. That was on a munitions crate.
On a munitions crate? What an amazing thing.
Very interesting. My brother in Christ, though, and I understand you're in a war. Just put on a tie, just at least for the Pope. Come on. I know. I think he's made some kind of vow not to wear a tie until it's solved. But I mean, for the Pope, we could do it, right? Decorum is important for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, you're here with a hoodie. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm not meeting the Pope. I'm meeting the Thad. There's a big difference.
Yes, but you should be wearing a tie. No, I'm kidding.
When we were there, Thad, we were seeing that they were constructing some sort of new structure within the Vatican. And if anyone knows what it is,
right,
I'd love to know that. But I would love to see, we have the Paul VI audience hall. We have the specific buildings for the dicasteries, for the media.
The ATM,
we have all these buildings,
the gas station,
the ATMs, the post office, the pharmaceutical office, all these things. I would love to see a dedicated building that becomes iconic as a place of peace within Vatican City, that when you see that, that is where peace negotiations happen. I think that would be a really a really powerful gesture and a really powerful place for mediation in the world.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think that's cool.
Now, if mediation doesn't work, here's another thing. This may be a little bit more far-fetched. That we're starting to tie a lot of these strings together, right? We brought the Latin Mass people together. They're the most vociferous. They're the most
absolutely
maybe devout. They're rich because they have Vatican. They're dual citizens of the Holy See. We've established a peace-making place.
And they know how to use AI.
And they know how to use AI.
Yeah.
They got their baby faces up on the walls.
Yeah.
I definitely think maybe it's time for the Pope to be leader of an army again. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Oh my gosh.
Hear me out.
I love the differences that you and I have.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we'll see who the Pope calls first. Who's approaching like better.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just like you have UN peacekeeping forces that go into hot zones and ensure treaties, ensure ceasefires, help oversee elections, help to distribute necessary humanitarian aid. I would love to see the establishment of a Holy See peacekeeping force that can be deployed truly neutral, truly pacifistic, but can keep peace, deliver humanitarian aid. I know we have organizations, like Aid to the Church in Need, but I'm talking actual armed force. It could be a branch of the Swiss Guard. It could be a branch of the Hospitallers. It could be the resurrection of the Knights Templar, whatever you want to do. But I definitely think that an official Vatican-backed, drawn from the citizenship, the dual citizenship of the Holy See, can be, and again, an incredibly powerful force for peace and good in the world that also helps to exert Catholic influence on these situations that a lot of times seem insurmountable. So Thad, what do you think? You signing up? You taking the cross? You getting the sword? We're going to go protect these war zones?
I would go protect the war zones, but I don't think that the church needs a armed forces that goes out beyond the walls.
The church has had an armed force for 1,700 years. It's only the last 100 years that they haven't.
Yeah, and we don't need it. I agree with you that it would be good to have it, but your UN
everyone says they don't need a Maserati. Everyone says they don't need a Maserati until they have one. Okay.
Yeah,
everyone says they don't.
And you know what? My Passat is just fine compared to the Maserati in getting to and from the dentist. I mean, come on, man.
It is.
We're not there. I was driving a rental car the other day, and I was on the highway, and you know what? I had the opportunity to just hammer away. And I will say, I thought to myself, I'm glad this isn't my daily driver, because I'd have a lot more tickets and I'd be a lot more tempted to be hammering it away. And I don't think we as a church need the temptation for corruption or a
Let me ask you this,
for the devil to potentially push people out.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, please do.
In the Garden of Gethsemane,
when
they go to arrest Jesus.
Yep.
Peter cut off the priest servant's ear.
Yes.
Did Peter just find a sword?
It.
All right, sheath it. But that also means that Peter carried around a sword with him everywhere he went. He didn't just pick up a sword off the ground and cut off dude's ear. Peter,
do you carry around a sword in the rough streets of Cleveland? Are you carrying a sword with you? I know you have a few in your house, right?
Absolutely.
I get it. But you're not carrying it in the Jeep in downtown Cleveland saying, don't come near me.
You don't know me. All I'm saying is St. Peter himself was strapped. And that's at the very beginning of the church, which also leads me. And if you look at Saint Simon the Zealot, well, the Zealots were absolutely known to carry weapons. That was one of the things that made them the Zealots. Or Judas Iscariot, who ultimately betrayed Christ. Iscariot comes from the fact that they probably carried a specific type of dagger. The apostles were strapped. The Knights Templar were strapped. Leo the Great had Roman garrisons behind him when he's going against Attila. Urban II, Pope Urban called the crusade. Julius II protected his rights. You had the Swiss Guard. There is a long tradition of having a little bit of muscle behind the church. And I'm just saying maybe it's time for that.
Look, I'm not saying you shouldn't have muscle.
In a peacekeeping way.
I'm not saying that the church shouldn't have muscle. You and I would both sign up like
100%.
that if Leo asked us to come back. And I joined the Swiss
100%.
Guard. I just can't. I'm not tall enough for Swiss. But, you
Right.
know, like,
You can
come
join the
on.
Irish Guard. Or the
Yeah, I could
Polish
join
Guard.
the Irish Guard, the Polish Guard. Resisting every joke I got there.
You know, one of the arguments that had the Crusades happen was so that they could take second and third brothers who had no lands but were strapped up and give them somewhere to go use their martial force instead of fighting each other in Europe. Well, maybe we could take some of this pent-up male energy that everyone wants to talk crap about in today's world to say that masculinity is toxic and reroute it towards something that's chivalrous, good, and uses male, masculine, good qualities to protect the people who need protection. I just think that something like that really could be a massive benefit in today's world when you have mega power countries can exploit people. You have these war zones. You have all these areas that like Haiti. Haiti needs peacekeepers, but the UN doesn't want to get in there because it's too politically messy. I think the Vatican could say, we don't care about the politics. Let's put peacekeepers in. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'm with you, but the church calls for us to be peacekeepers. It calls for us to go to those places. As someone who, right after college,
they call the Colt 45 the peacemaker.
Oh,
right?
Come on. I get it, and I know where you're going, and you're poking the bear here. I get it, but you're not going to get me around on this one. Sorry,
all right.
Ain't happening.
Well,
I like it.
Look, people listening, do you agree with this?
I love the idea of Vatican uniforms, right? Like, we could get into like, okay, what's the make and model of the weaponry, but
right.
Yeah, that's not the church.
All right. Look, if you're listening, put in the comments, who do you agree with? Pacifist Thad, who's just happy to have the papal estates taken over, or strong, muscular?
No.
Ryan, who's like, let's go out and enforce our peace on the world.
Yeah, let's go out. Let's redo that. Or Thad, who says, look, you come in my house, I'm going to take care of you. I've seen the Swiss Guard. They will take care of business around the Vatican.
Okay, if they could take care of it around the Vatican, why can't they do it for poor people in Haiti or Gaza or in any of these areas?
Then maybe
that's the point. You just made my point.
No, I did not. I absolutely did not. It's defending my house. We here in the United States, you can defend your house, but don't go out.
People, Thad, every person is the temple and the home of the Holy Spirit. We need to defend those houses.
This is fun. Let's go on to the next one.
All right. Obviously, that's a little silly. So here's one last thing that I'd really like to see. Well, two things. I'll do two things. One is I'd like to see some of the cardinals. I'm sorry, some of the archbishops in the United States, and this is a specifically a United States thing, and if this applies to your country, let us know in the comments, where they would traditionally be what seats of archbishops and bishops who would almost automatically de facto become cardinals, like Philadelphia, like San Francisco. That caused a lot of divisions. I mean, I think a lot of the criticism of Francis and disunioning the church was kind of, we don't need any more monsignors. We don't need any ecclesial climbers. We don't need people expecting they can be cardinals. Well, there's a reason for some of those things because they're good. People respond to reward. People respond to having their voices heard and valued. It's like, for example, I definitely think Archbishop Carleone of San Francisco should be made a cardinal. But I also think, maybe Bishop Barron should be made a cardinal. I think there's a lot of great bishops who traditionally in maybe past pontificates would have been made cardinals who were passed over that I'd like to see in the pontificate of the American Pope become cardinals.
I love the idea. Here's where I'll push back. I'll push back in the sense that I don't think that because someone is in a place, they should be granted the influence by default. So, in other words, just because somebody is appointed the bishop in San Francisco, the archbishop in San Francisco, that all of a sudden, now your point
that's what you have
about
in
the
New York.
Current archbishop, that's all right. But I would, you made the comment about the ladder climbers and the likes. There is I would argue, a distinct area of people that love the church more than maybe necessarily the work of the church. And in those instances, that's where I don't want them as cardinals that are taken over, to make it more about the thing than what it does.
Maybe you're less of a pragmatist than me, because I know there's been a lot of cardinals that have definitely benefited the church, maybe at the expense of their own scrupulosity and of their own good decision making.
I recognize we're all flawed and nobody's perfect, just like the church is.
You said you didn't think that someone should be a cardinal just because of where they're from. Don't appoint somebody who isn't cardinal material to the traditional cardinalate.
This is good. I agree with you.
Like, can you imagine the Archbishop of New York not being a cardinal? Every Archbishop of New York has been a cardinal for hundreds of years. Don't appoint someone who's not cardinal material there. Same thing with San Francisco, which is, traditionally been, and Los Angeles, Archbishop Gomez. That's another one.
Sure.
I mean, you had Archbishop Chaput, not named a cardinal. That's just bad etiquette, if you ask me. That's bad etiquette, because it feels like a slight. You're creating enemies and enmity for no reason. It kind of felt like a thumb in the eye for no reason, right?
Well,
they're not good churchmen. These people who always have been cardinals from these archdioceses, just keep some decorum. Decorum is there for a reason, and not doing that, I think, caused unnecessary problems for Francis, in my opinion.
And I would make the argument that it's about the opportunity to serve and what you can do, not about the title that you carry. I agree. If the service is there, right? If the service is there, then yes, they should be made a cardinal. I'm just disagreeing with an automatic. I think, yes, you're right.
Well, the Bishop of Rome automatically becomes the leader of the church.
Say what?
The Bishop of Rome automatically becomes the Pope, leader of the church. I mean, there's something to be said about respect.
But he's selected as the Pope, right?
Okay, well, they're selected as the Cardinal Archbishop of New York. Like, there's some things that I think are just part and parcel of an office, to where you respect the office irrespective of the man, right? I mean, we see that with whether you're a Democrat or Republican and you disagree with, maybe the other party being the president, you still have to respect the office. You still have to respect legitimate authority. And I think when you undermine that by saying the expectation, the custom, the decorum is that you are a cardinal if you are the archbishop of this particular diocese, that you don't get it feels like a slight, and you create opposition. I just think it's bad management, if you ask me.
Okay. I can understand your statement. I just think we have scenarios where there are probably, no, I can't make it. I'm not in the conversations. The only piece I will offer in closing on this one is the Pope is selected by a group of cardinals, and that group became even larger under Francis than with a bishop being placed in San Francisco or Omaha or San Antonio, right? Those are made by an individual. And so we rely on good judgment of a much smaller group, and one would, I don't know, I can't get into beyond that, but I just think there is a difference.
Okay. I can respect that.
Yeah.
Here's something that the Pope should definitely do. Now, we've seen some videos of the Pope. He'll be sitting there. I saw one when he was still cardinal, and he's waiting for an interview, and it seemed like it was taking a while. So he takes out his phone and starts looking at it. So, Pope Leo, if you're watching this, here's something that you should definitely do that should be on your to-do list. You should go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow and download the world's #1 Catholic prayer app. And I bet you that he probably already has it on his phone. I don't know that for sure, but I would imagine Pope Leo has, as a man of prayer, as an English speaker, I bet you he has Hallow on the phone. But if you don't, Pope Leo, as my gift for your inauguration, you can use the link Catholic Talk Show /Hallow, and you can download the app for free. Get it for 90 days and see why so many of your constituents and so many of the people that you lead use this app to pray every single day, and how much good it's doing for the church. The Hallow app has so many different prayers and devotions and different ways that you can increase your faith, whether it's sacred music, sleep aids, daily devotions, examinations of conscience, daily rosary, Bible reflections. It has so much, Bible in the year with Father, who should be Bishop Cardinal Schmitz. It has things with Bishop, who should be Cardinal Bishop Barron. It has, I think you have people like Matt Fradd. You have also people like, celebrities on there, whether it's Jonathan Rumi or, Mark
Wahlberg.
I mean, you have so many people are coming around to the faith because of this app. And I think that Hallow really is one of the bellwethers that shows that the tide has turned on the large cultural and public perception that it is good to have faith in your life. And having such a simple tool that you can use every day, using modern technology to bring faith into your life, is a definite good. So if you go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow, you can 100% download this for free and see why so many people should use it. Now, that was for Pope Leo, but that goes for everybody watching this. So again, CatholicTalkShow.com/Hallow. Thad, what'd you think of that pitch?
Dude, you nailed that. You nailed it. And you know what? The only thing I'll add to it is the invite, and I don't think that the guys at Hallow would have a problem with me saying this, but Pope Leo, if you want to put a prayer on Hallow, give us a call. We know the guys there. We'll get you in. You're probably already talking to them, but let's do it.
Yeah. Well, or we could start a private chat group and prayer group on there, and we could pray about all these things that Thad and I are suggesting. Another thing that everyone watching should do, and Pope Leo, if you'd like to, you go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon. You can see all the different ways that you could help our show continue to reach so many people throughout the world and continue our mission and our charism of evangelization through modern communication. We're not asking for thousands of dollars. We're asking for just your pocket change, just the stuff that's in your candy dish at home or in the coffee holders in your car, just a little bit, but when all of you come together, it allows us to continue to produce the show, whether it's from the editing, whether it's from the distribution that we're able to do, have the people pay for cameras. I got a new microphone from it. It goes a long way for us to be able to continue this show. So Ryan and I and Thaddeus, when he co-hosts, we rely on this. We really rely on your generous support. And we got a lot of really cool gifts that we can give you in our gratitude. Hats, coffee mugs, rosaries, different devotionals, hoodies, all sorts of great stuff that we say thank you for your generous support. Again, until they come up with Vatican, you can go to CatholicTalkShow.com/Patreon, and you can see all the ways that you can support us. We really, really, really appreciate it. Now,
I'm really impressed how you jumped it, because I was going to say, when are you going to accept Vatican? So you preempted. I mad props, Ryan.
One of the things that I've learned in the now almost 6 years of doing the show is that if you can do what's called callbacks from earlier in the episode later in, it just really, really helps. And again, I think that's a good thing to call back to what we said earlier in the episode. If you're watching this, click the like and subscribe button. I was just looking at our analytics on our channel. 70% of our viewers are not subscribed. Actually, 70.3% of all the viewers of our content have not clicked the subscribe button. And I think that that's unnecessary. Look, you're here, you're watching it. I mean, it takes nothing. You just have to move your finger. Like that, on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, you see the creation of man, and you see God's finger fully stretched out, right?
Here, put your finger
stretched out. He's reaching. He's reaching. God is reaching. And Adam's hand is like this. And all he has to do is move one muscle to touch God. And all you have to do is just one little motion to click the like button and the subscribe button. We're asking you to do the bare minimum. If you could do that, we appreciate it. We're all family here, right?
Yep.
So click like and subscribe. Follow us on all the social media channels. So last thing, Thad, and this will be, I think, the maybe the funnest part of it.
Okay.
I hope and pray for a very long pontificate for Leo, which means that there's going to be some really important canonizations during his pontificate. And here's a couple that I would love to see canonized while he is Pope. Now, we know that Blessed Carlo Acutis and Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati will still likely be canonized this year, as long as all the mechanics of making that happen come together. I would love to see Fulton Sheen canonized. I would love to see Pius XII canonized. I'd love to see the case reopened for Thomas à Kempis, who I think was maligned, who wrote one of the most all-time read Christian devotional books, but his cause for canonization was derailed because they conjectured he was buried alive and scratched at his grave trying to get out, which means he wasn't at peace with his death, so they closed his cause for canonization. There's a lot of people out there that I think definitely their cause for canonization can proceed. Blessed Solanus Casey, that? You got any saints that you'd like to see canonized?
I don't have any names offhand because I didn't have a lot of time to think through who I might chuck up there. But here, I'll give you the qualities that I think we're looking for, right? Along with all of the normal mechanics of identifying our saints. I was struck when we were in Assisi and we went by and were able to see Carlo Acutis there. I was struck by the fact that he was wearing clothes I'd wear, right? And so,
well, Thad, we also had one other conversation about him.
We did, but we'll come back to that. The idea here that as a church we find ways to identify those saints, and I wouldn't say that we make saints, right? We're going to formally recognize those individuals who were saints that strove.
Who are already saints, yeah.
Already saints, right? That were just amazing role models that intervene on our behalf. There are individuals in this world today. I know individuals that are alive right now that if their life continues out the way that they are right now, some have been role models to me in my life, and everything that he or she has done is focused on serving God, in going out and being peacemakers and peacekeepers in those areas, even without their sword or their Colt 45, Ryan. Being able to
There's
go
room
out
for them too.
Those are the individuals that are there, and building up the opportunities. So having the church build up those opportunities where these individuals can be highlighted while they're alive so that it goes on.
So here's a couple more that I'd like to see, and I got my list up here, that I think could and would be a joyful opportunity or a joyful moment for the church if they were canonized. Blessed John Paul I. I mean, I see a lot of demeanor similarities between him and Leo. I think that would be a wonderful opportunity, again, for a pope to canonize a pope. Father Walter Chizek, who did that, He Leadeth Me. He was in the Soviet prison camps. I think that would be a great one. Father Vincent Capodanno, he was a U.S. military chaplain. Military chaplains are an amazing group. They do so much. And he was killed in Vietnam while ministering to wounded Marines. I think that's a great example of he can maybe even be the patron of our new peacekeeping force. Saint Therese of Lisieux's parents, I think, would be canonized together as a married couple. They already are canonized. I'm sorry. Chesterton and Tolkien. I would love to see their cases advanced. That would be really cool.
Be very
Pauline Jaricot, she founded the propagation of the faith. What are they called? The Pontifical Mission Societies. Father Augustus Tolton. This is a cool one because Father Augustus Tolton was the first African American priest in the United States, and he was in Chicago. I think that would be a really wonderful canonization to happen for one Chicagoan to canonize another Chicagoan. Who else? Blessed Stanley Rother, who I've got a statue of up here. I think that would be a nice one too, especially being an American going to administer in the Latin American region. I think would be something that would appeal to Leo. Now, obviously, the Pope doesn't just arbitrarily say you're a saint. You're a saint.
I was waiting for this. Go ahead.
That's not how it happens, but you can definitely have more resources and more intentionality behind advancing the cause, giving the resources to do the examination of their life, and to have all the canon lawyers look at everything.
And there are individuals that put forth the cases on those. So this is where we are saying, as the Catholic Talk Show, if you are associated with those causes, put them forth. Pope Leo,
Father Michael McGivney too, from the Knights of Columbus, right?
Yes, right. So doing that now, you mentioned Tolkien.
Yes.
Are we talking like Saint Gollum?
No, it would be.
No, I know it's Tolkien, but I mean,
it'd be all
of a sudden, those movies would be a much different thing. Reaching back. What do we got here? The ring. There you go.
I have the ring.
You have the ring. I don't have
now
the
quit
ring.
looking at it. It's my precious.
Okay. Okay, Schmiegel.
But hey, if you're listening, tell us in the comments who you would like to see maybe get canonized during the next, hopefully 20 years of the Pontificate of Leo. I know there's a lot. I'm sure we missed out a ton of them, and everyone's going to have their saints that they're aware of. And, we're kind of put on the spot here to try to remember them all. But
right.
Thad, I think this was, this was kind of lighthearted. This was fun. But I think there are some really great suggestions in here of really, I think, powerful or interesting things that could happen and reasons why they would benefit the church. Now, obviously, Pope Leo was placed there by the will of God, and he will administer his pontificate in the way that he seems fit. But Pope Leo, if you're watching this, and I know you are, here's some humble suggestions from two absolute knuckleheads on some ideas that I think maybe form part of the Vox Populi of here's some things that the people would like to see. So, take them or leave them. We offer them free to you as suggestions.
Yes. And Ryan, there's only one other that I would add, and that would be, if we're just laying it all out there and being honest with everybody watching, I'd love an invite just to come hang out. I'll go over and hang out with the Pope. Come on, right?
I will go there. I will go there and lose in tennis to you. I mean, if I was good, I would lose on purpose, and I'm not good. I'll let you I'll be your training dummy. You can just hit tennis balls at me and we can talk. It's cool. I'm down.
And I'll sit on the side eating popcorn, watching you get pelted with tennis balls from the Pope. Game on. Pope Leo, I'll buy the tennis balls.
With Vatican.
No, not with Vatican.
That's all that you can take. That's all you can. You can't buy Vatican tennis balls with cash. You got to use Vatican. Come on, dude. You know this.
Do you think they have like a Dick's Sporting Goods in the Vatican that we don't know about, where you could buy tennis balls, tennis rackets?
Yeah, it's called St. Sebastian's.
Oh my gosh, you're good,
I don't
man.
know.
You're good.
Well,
all right, man. I got.
It's always I've got some real world things to take care of that I'm sure all the people in my email are suggesting that I do. So I got to take care of that. But that is always great to have you on. I really appreciate it. Ryan appreciates you filling in for him while he's taking his kids out a little weekend trip. Well, it's a weekday trip, but still, Thad, you're always welcome on. You're a great friend of the show. And I hope people who watch the Catholic Talk Show get to know you more and more as we go forward.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I love you, love Ryan. Love the opportunity to be here. It's absolutely fantastic. And I hope there was something that, if nothing else, spawned some ideas for people that do have more closely related to Pope Leo and everything he can do.
That's it. Well, everyone, remember to pray for the Pope. Remember to pray for the holy souls in purgatory, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.